We've been speaking all morning about AI. Ravi set up Vector 3 really well. This is what's going on in the world today. And I'll show you examples. I'll show you a process. I'll talk a little bit about the basis framework. And then we'll make it real by showing you how we've solved this from a business lens. So that's what you're in for the next 25 minutes. Let's start here. What's going on with the world of AI agents? Agents have been talked about, written about, headlined, covers of magazines. But really what they're doing basically is one simple thing. They're productivity amplifiers, 10x amplifiers for any sort of process productivity that you have. So far, we've been running on the left, human and IT, working together. Great, things get done consistently, there's repeatability, there's obviously a little bit of up and down, but we make it work. The promise of agents is you bring them in, the humans are still in the loop. IT systems are still in the loop. They all change, they all work slightly differently. But the benefits are what you see at the bottom. We'll show you an example of the 3 primary KPIs that are starting to make themselves appear very, very easily. Throughput goes up, quality goes up, and cost goes down. Go back to what Indra was talking about. By the way, what a fantastic session she had. But she was talking about, start AI projects and make sure you know those KPIs. Keep those 3 things in mind, and you'll see why it makes sense as you go forward with this. Now, this is where we're at. All of you have been to many, many AI conferences and many, many AI sessions. Models are great today. If you think about what a model is able to do, it's fantastic. There's really nothing that we've seen in the history of humanity that comes close to what models do. Infrastructure is cheap, right? Cheapish, the valuation of NVIDIA notwithstanding, but you can get access to GPUs fairly quickly. The toolkits are fairly mature, but still, we're in this bottleneck. We're stuck in this little bit of a ran fast, ran hard, but not really sure where to go from here. So the thing that we're seeing, right? We've invented electricity, but there's a lot of just taking 2 sticks and rubbing them together, trying to make fire. There's a lot of that happening. I'm going to ask you, show of hands, how many of you have projects that are somewhat stuck in that pilot purgatory, sitting there, not scaling? Internal Cognizant people don't do that. Others, be honest. Thank you. So fair bit, and this is where we are. We're seeing this with clients. We're seeing this internally as well sometimes. Let's be candid about it. We see this. What is happening is this. The AI journey wasn't started with purpose. It started off with experimentation, right? So everyone wanted to AI wash. Everyone wanted to do things that were cool. So we started off scattered experiments. We brought in a bunch of different vendors, all of whom claimed that they had the capability to deliver magic, and it didn't happen. Cost was not thought about. We were so excited to get started with the AI journey that cost was like, well, we'll deliver magic, and then who's going to care about cost? So that was another thing. We never really thought about integrating these projects into the enterprise. And that's where the glue code became a factor, right? We all talk about vibe coding. No one talks about the glue code that was put in place to make all of these POCs functional. And that leads to governance anxiety, and that leads to fear, and that leads to a situation where no leader wants to stand up and say, I'm ready. I have confidence that what I've built will survive a Black Friday spike, or I can close the quarter with confidence based on what I've built. And that's where we stand today. We think there's a different way around this. We talk about this in the AI Factory. My colleague Sriram's going to come up later in the day, and he'll walk you through this in a little bit more detail. But let me just show you what we think is the way out to ground everyone on an AI agent. The name itself is wonderful. It's descriptive. It tells you that it's a program with agency, the ability to decide how it executes. Start on the left, different kinds of process inputs, ability to reason because it's been given a goal, ability to take actions. The actions are integrated with the agent and also with enterprises. So, if you've got a large ERP system, plugs into the ERP system. You've got a large SaaS platform or 5, plugs into all of those and starts to actually take actions. And then the last part, which is key, this is sort of encapsulated in the whole ADLC part, is the ability to actually measure every single action and learn from it. So this is grounding everyone on what an agent is. The thing at the top, I think, is a clever way of capturing this. It's a teammate, right? Surya spoke about how we're going to have humans and AI agents working together. But this is really, think of this as a teammate that has APIs for hands, We're not at the stage of robotic agents that are executing physical actions yet. So right now it's a teammate with APIs for hands and observability for a conscience. I think that's a very clever way of putting how this comes together. How do we build this for clients? This is where I want to introduce the Cognizant Agent Foundry offering. And here's a quick view. We hear about how you want to get started and how you don't want to just get started and then find out that you've gone down the wrong path. So phase 1 or phase 0, ideation. Rapid ability to create things, test them out, play with them, and make sure that you've actually thought out the use case. Now you'll see a visual pattern, right? Under each of those boxes, you'll see the offerings that we bring in. All of those offerings that you see here, I think pretty much every single one, is something that I encourage you to walk outside. You'll see the demo pods. There's a lot of very smart people that are by those demo pods. They can walk you through each of these assets. And of course, there's the ability to bring in partner capabilities as well. So our approach is this. Agent Foundry is this framework that lets you go from left to right, the widest and the largest and the longest possible menu of agentic offerings, vertical and horizontal. This is what we bring to the table, but then we also recognize what we bring to the table is not what you can use by default. So you may want to go down the pathway of create something, design it, set ROI goals. Again, going back to the KPIs that were talked about this morning, right? So set some very specific goals on what you want to measure, engineer it, and then scale. And when you scale, keep an eye on the ROI and the spend that you're doing to get that ROI. So if you can do all of those things together, and we can enable that for you, you'll be up and running, obviously, in a much faster pace than you've been able to in the past. This is a summary of the basis framework. My colleagues, Shweta and Shankar, are in the audience somewhere. Please do look for them, right? So this is the approach that we start with. You saw what we do with context engineering this morning, what Rohan and Babak showed on the stage. Once you've got that, you still have to do these things, right? So start at the top and understand what it is that you're doing. Understand the need to re-engineer the process. That is key. If you're just taking an existing process and sprinkling AI in it, you'll get some value, but it's not going to be meaningful, and it's not going to be something that you'll be willing to talk about a year from now. So the re-engineering part is key. Then go into the whole agent development lifecycle, the ADLC part that we think is critical, and then you go onwards from there. Now this is an ongoing process. This isn't a one and done. Unlike the traditional SDLC, requirements to delivered were done. This keeps going because you want your agent to get better and smarter over time. There's a lot more detail on this. You can see some of the text on the right. I'll show you another quick slide. 6 layers that we look at when we go through this process, right? So starting at the very top, how is this agent going to be experienced? So far, it's been very back office, mid office heavy. Agents, if they're going to be impactful, are going to start with the experience layer at the top. The experience layer then leads to your engagement layer and orchestration and storage and all of those wonderful boxes that you see on here. They all come together to create that full left to right tech stack that's going to allow you to build capabilities and scale very quickly. So a fair bit of work that gets done in this space. Let's talk about how we make this real. Any insurance company, right? The example came up earlier too. The insurance business hasn't changed since the 1400s. Well, we think it's starting to change a little bit. But the challenge remains the same. Every insurance policy goes through an underwriter review, and an insurance company wants to speed up that process as much as possible. The process today is, you can see those things. It takes a long time. It isn't really down to the actual case. It's a lot of gut feel, a lot of just if then else sort of a logic that's built into it. If you see something that you haven't seen before, the process isn't geared to change very quickly. So the process is somewhat brittle. And then you obviously still need to. Insurance, we use this as an example for a specific reason. A regulated industry, you need to make sure that you have compliance and you're able to explain the decision that you did. So let's look at what happens in a business problem such as this. We put together this detailed architecture. If there's techie folks in the room, I'm sure you'll love this, but you can see how this goes back to that experience layer, down to the memory, down to the orchestration, the front end, the storage, the responses, and then how we actually measure this. So go left to right, or if you want to go top to bottom, you'll sort of reach the same conclusion. But you can see, we built in the ability to integrate with a large model. There's security and compliance built in. LLM ops built in. Observability built in. All of this done within the boundary of responsible AI. There's another colleague here, Amir, who leads our responsible AI capabilities. If you haven't had a chance to speak with him, please do. We think that is going to be one of the key differentiators in how agents scale out and get to start driving value for the enterprise. So that's the big picture architecture view of it. Wonderful diagram, right? I got a little bit of shock and awe by putting that diagram up there, but what does it really mean for the business? Well, here's what we think it means, right? So start with the process on the left. 20,000 cases being done today. Let's just keep that as the baseline. 20,000 cases being processed through a mix of human and IT. A certain amount of processing errors, as you would expect with anything that involves humans. And therefore, a certain amount of costs associated in the pre-state. This is what is happening today. When we introduce agents, we're going to keep the baseline the same. So we're still processing the 20,000 cases. But look at the things that improve. Quality actually improved because the agents aren't deterministic. They learn. They've got the ability to apply context. They've got the ability to go, well, this is this thing that I haven't seen before, but I've got enough intelligence to know what to do with this. So the quality goes up, and look at the cost. Look at how much that drops from the original number. So when you try and summarize it, 3.6 times the number of cases processed per FTE if you were to keep the cost the same, the spend the same, so you can increase your capacity. Or if you're looking for cost savings, that's how much you can drive through the introduction of agents into a process as old as underwriting. So that's a proof point that I wanted to share with you. This isn't the only proof point. We're going to talk a little bit about more. So here's some additional proof points, right? So different industries, different flavors, but the first one's for a retailer. Look at how much we're processing through digital agents. 40% of interactions are being handled by a digital agent. And this is not happening at the cost of customer experience. Customer sat hasn't gone down. But that is how much we're able to route to agents that are able to handle things like, returns, or I got the wrong order, or where else can I find this product that I really need today? So that's an example. You've got an example from the world of telecom. A lot of manual effort goes in finding the right circuit, T3 or T1. Look at the amount of savings that we were able to realize. 80% time savings on a fairly high value, high cost activity. This isn't the kind of thing that is done at scale, right? You need the ability to understand the demands of throughput and how you manage them over time. So you can see some of those numbers are really, really meaningful, 80% savings. The SDLC one is one that I think we all relate to. How do you actually take things that are manual and then create a user story using a generative AI? Ravi spoke about 30% savings realized. In the next 12 to 24 months, we're going to go to 50, but this is where we're at today. 25 to 30% savings in how fast we're able to create scripts for testing, as well as the user story that triggers all of this. So these are examples that we're seeing in the real world today. How do you get started with this journey? Let's talk a little bit about that. One, this is not a multi-year roadmap. It can build up to one, but you don't start with a multi-year roadmap because it's not exactly the recipe for succeeding in any IT career these days. We think this is a journey of 6 to 7 weeks. And here's the breakdown on how you start, how do you engineer, and then how do you deploy this at scale. If you go back to the visual that I had with the agent foundry story, this relates very well to it. What I'd like you to do is think about, you made the point that things that you bet on last year, 5 bets that were made, 3 came through and 2 didn't. I'll make a forward-looking bet. I think there's going to be 2 kinds of companies that come back here next year. Companies that have agent foundries and others that are going to struggle to keep up with the companies that have invested in building agents. So that's the proposition. In 12 months, you can come back and tell me if I was right or wrong, but that's what I'm willing to stick my neck out and bet on. This is what you want to get to. The ability to discover agents within your enterprise, to deploy agents within the enterprise. So there isn't rework. There's the ability to take what's been built and deploy it very quickly.